computer. Okay, we're recording and everything else is good. I see all little things. Okay, so all right, so then we have to make a pact so that our ADHD won't go wild. So if I'm on a tangent or you're on a tangent, then we both
rein it in.
Yes. I don't know if we can raise our hand or if there's like a word to say, but we both are. If it's a safe place, we can call it back into the topic, right?
I think it sounds like a good agreement.
As I was saying that, I was about to go off on another tangent. All right, Becky, thanks for coming on the virtual couch.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to be here. And I think we tried to get this scheduled a while ago, and then I don't think you had some girls' camp stuff, and then I would, I don't know, have stuff going on or whatever. So
life just got crazy, right?
Yeah, but long awaited, because you have so many different, and I already will have given you an amazing introduction in my.
Thank you.
Sure. But I probably have already said that when we've been going back and forth, you've got so many topics that you can cover. And so when you had mentioned that you do love and logic parenting, I want to hear all about that. I'm a nurtured heart approach guy, and I hear that they're similar, but my goal is I'm going to come at this. I'm not going to do in nurtured heart, we do this, but I just want to pretend that I know nothing, which is not a hard role to play for me. And so I would love to hear more about love and logic. But before we do that, give me a little bit about your background.
A little bit about my background. Okay. Like professionally or personally? Do you want both? Just kind of Reader's Digest in both spaces?
Wherever you would like to go, Becky.
Oh, wow. That's fun. Okay. So I have been a therapist for the last 12 years. And I also do coaching because it's like therapy without a diagnosis, right?
Right.
And I started out professionally by working for DCFS. So here in Utah, that's the Division of Child and Family Services.
Okay.
So I worked in child protection.
Oh, wow.
Where I was actually like removing kids from homes. And then I switched gears and started to do in-home therapy to keep kids in homes. So that's kind of where like my social work stuff started.
That always was it a passion? Did you know growing up you wanted to get into social work, or is this a second career or a first career?
Yeah, so this is first career. It's honestly a calling. It's something that I know that God wants me to do. Initially I tried other paths, like just within college, tried taking other courses and stuff like that. Like I thought I'd really like interior design. I thought that I like to go in other directions, but God said no. So I conceded and started down the social work path, and it just has fit. So that's kind of why I got into it. And started out with DCFS and then worked for a variety of different agencies, like LDS Family Services, worked for them for a while, that kind of stuff, and then went out on my own about 8 years ago.
Okay. Was that a scary thing for you when you went out on your own? Was that hard?
Yeah, it was a lot harder for me than it was for my husband. My husband was very encouraging in it. But I am incredibly conservative. I'm not really a risk taker.
Okay.
And I liked the stability and consistency of having an agency take care of all of the other stuff and me just needing to show up and things like that. But the braver I got, the more courageous I got. And again, that was something that God was like, look, this is what you need to do. And I mean, he has to hit me in the face with a 2x4. I think it's just because I don't listen.
When he does, though, then you're on it, right?
Yep.
Only one is necessary, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, right? So anyway, that's why I finally decided to jump ship. It just got to a point where my private practice was flourishing, and I couldn't do both. I couldn't work for an agency. I was currently working for LDS Family Services at the time, and I couldn't do both.
So it sounds like you have is part of that calling to work with kids or families, or what do you feel like that is your?
So it's kind of eclectic. I specialize in betrayal trauma. So I do a lot of betrayal trauma. But with that, trauma's trauma. Some of it's, there's horses of different colors in that space, but trauma's trauma. And so, I've always by default just done the trauma thing. And I also see kids. So it's kind of, I don't know, half and half maybe.
Yeah.
Where, And it's just something that's just been natural.
So how did you come to Love and Logic and you know, and how, and what is, are we ready for this? I'm excited.
Let's go.
Okay.
Let's go. Yeah. So my parents actually, I mean, this tells you like how old Love and Logic is because of how old I am. My parents utilize Love and Logic. So my mom and dad got divorced after 18 years. And then my mom married my current stepdad. His name's Tom. And Tom came into the marriage with 12 children.
Oh, wow.
So my mom had 5 with my dad, and then Tom came in with 12 kids. Wow. And so my mom, to prevent insanity, started to take Love and Logic courses. Okay. So when I was a teenager, my mom started to utilize Love and Logic, and I liked the feel of it. Okay. I really, like as a kid, I felt like that's when parenting shifted for my mom, because prior to, it was very, very different. My mom was more of kind of a drill sergeant, which is the phrase. Yes, very like hit me with a fire hose, right? And so I noticed it as a teenager, my mom using it. And so when I got into adulthood, I started taking courses before I even had kids, and I just guinea pig on other people's kids. Like in my practice, you know, like when I do therapy, I'd guinea pig on other people's kids, or I had nieces and nephews and I'd guinea pig on them as well. And so that's where it started.
Okay, and how old were you? You say you were a teenager when your mom made that shift?
Yeah.
I like that you said that you felt, you know, you felt it different. And maybe this is too soon to jump into this, but, and I promised I wasn't going to say nurtured heart.
You're fine.
I know when I'm doing the nurtured heart stuff, I think it's funny when parents will say that their kids will kind of see that shift and that they'll kind of say, okay, I know what you're doing. Or they'll even almost mock it. You know, you weren't praising me enough. I mean, did you have that kind of an attitude?
No, I found it refreshing. Honestly, because I think it's just because of the principles of Love and Logic, like what's at the very core of it, made it very, very refreshing to me. Lots of empathy, lots of allowing me to make my own choices and things like that. And it was a stark contrast from how I was initially raised. Gotcha. So for me, it was refreshing. My siblings, not fans, no. But I really liked a lot of the aspects of it. So it was really cool for me.
Well, I like that. And maybe we can weave this into the interview too. I like the fact that you, it felt good, because I think a lot of times, you know, you have parents that have resistance to any kind of parenting program or paradigm shift or that sort of thing. So I like that you're saying, you know, we can tell a parent that there are also teenagers that will say thank you. You know, it's
right. And the thank you didn't come until later, until I had actually taken some of the courses. And honestly, the true appreciation didn't happen until I had my own kids, because I was seriously the most amazing mom before I had kids. Like I was so good at it. And I would tell you, I'm sure, like I was so good at it. And I thought, okay, I've got this down. I had taken like 4 of the Love and Logic courses. I mean, it's the same course just over and over and over to get into my head. And then I had my own babies and I was like, this is hard.
Yeah, you almost want to like put an ad out that says, hey, sorry, all you guys that I was giving advice to. I really had no idea. Right?
I had no clue. And I didn't know I didn't know, right? Like I didn't even know what I didn't know. But once I had my own kids, then the appreciation sunk in. Okay. Because I was like, this is tough. Like this doesn't just roll off your tongue. This isn't just super easy. And our own kids bring up stuff in us. And so to reflect on that and see like, wow, my parents had to have a lot of mindfulness, a lot of awareness of themselves. And this doesn't come easy. Like you have to practice and practice and practice. It gave me a ton of appreciation.
Well, so, and, you know, I had a session recently where there's going to be a blended family, and we were talking about a kind of a parenting strategy or a parenting paradigm, or to be aligned on the same parenting paradigm. How important is that? I mean, do you feel like that is something you preach? What are the challenges with that in general? Maybe even before.
I think that kind of takes it to a broader spectrum of me, because I feel like not only and maybe this comes like from the betrayal trauma therapist in me, I don't know, but I think that you can apply anything and not have the other one necessarily applying the same tactics, and it can still be successful.
Okay.
Definitely more helpful if you're on the same page, but there's a lot that can be done. In fact, there's a whole like section of Love and Logic where they talk about here's how to do that if the other parent's not on board. Here's how to do that if the other, like your kids are in 2 different houses, other parent has a completely different lifestyle than you. Here's how to go about doing that. And at the end of the day, when you boil it down, basically it's you do you and focus on your relationship with your kiddo. You stay in your lane
Yeah.
And the other parent will either see that and say, that's awesome, walk me through that, I want some of that. Or the other parent might not have as connected of a relationship.
Okay, I love it. So, but you're owning what you can own.
What you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really, love and logic really facilitates not lecturing the other parent. So you get to use all of the strategies of love and logic in your relationship as well as with your kids. Like, so with your spouse, you're not going to lecture them. You're not going to tell them what they have to do or how they need to apply it. You're going to stay in your lane and you're going to just lead out. And if they decide they want to adopt it, awesome. Then hopefully they can have as connected of a relationship with their kids as you can. If they don't, that's okay too. You do you. And so that's kind of but I think that comes from a lot of different spaces. It's not just a love and logic space.
Well, and I think that, and I won't keep hammering this, but so if a kid even gives you pushback, or there may even be your spouse could give you pushback of, oh, well, look at you getting all fancy with your, new thing. And that's normal. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you stop. And I love that you're saying love and logic has that even probably built into it.
Yeah. And what's beautiful for me is I kind of use that sometimes as like a measuring stick. Like as a therapist, if I'm not getting fired every now and again, am I really doing my job? Like, right? Like if every single person I'm seeing is like, oh, I love this. This is awesome. This is amazing. Thank you so much. Like, am I really stretching myself? And I think it's the same in regards to parenting, right? If you're not getting some kickback from your kids, if you're not getting some pushback and it's just like smooth gravy train the whole time, it's fair to really look at that parenting strategy.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get kickback. It's natural. It's part of the human experience. It's not to say that they're going to kick back all the time and every single time. And if there's that's fair to have awareness as well. But yeah, you're going to get kicked. It's not a situation of where your kids are like, thank you so much for this parenting strategy. It's changing my life. It's strengthening our connection. I'm so appreciative of it at 14.
Okay.
That's not.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even to be expected at some point, right? So, all right, let's dive in. Where do we start? What is the love and logic? What is or tell me more.
Yeah. So let me kind of walk you through. So here's something to keep in mind first. And this is what I've noticed as just a parenting coach and a parenting therapist is a lot of times when we learn a new strategy. So as I give you this stuff, right, and as I give the folks that are listening this new stuff, a lot of times we hear it and we're like, oh yeah, that sounds like truth. And then we go into this place of shame and we start to judge our then selves with our now knowledge. Yeah. So as I'm like outlining this stuff, it's important for us to stay in this space of, okay, I'm not going to judge my then self with my now knowledge. So if I obtain new knowledge in this episode or whatever, I'm not going to go back and be like, oh, no wonder my kids are la, 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 la. Like that's on me. And like how you phrased it, we should on ourselves.
Yeah.
And so stay clear of that and just be super aware. Like just have that awareness of, oh, okay, note to self. That needs to shift a little bit. Like now that you've got new knowledge, you can show up different, right?
Yeah.
So the love part of love and logic is the idea that basically we're going to show our kids love by being incredibly boundaried and by holding them accountable with logical consequences. So that's the love part.
I almost want to pause because I think that I think people, when they hear things like love and logic or nurtured heart or parenting system or paradigm, that they immediately think it's just because I had someone say this recently of, okay, so it's just going to be the squishy feely stuff, and they're going to have people walk all over them, and they're going to cry at every Kleenex commercial, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But you're saying there's boundaries, there's accountability.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's really hard. Like, I'm just going to be honest with, like, the reason I became a facilitator is because I could not have this stuff roll off my tongue naturally.
Yeah.
Like, I was noticing that it was really hard because the key component is empathy.
Okay.
And if we're not given empathy as a kiddo, it's really hard to practice it, right? And so I had to teach it. I had to go to Colorado, learn how to teach it, and then teach it a ton in order for it to just kind of roll off my tongue.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's going to be tough, right? But the love part is that boundaried stuff. Okay. So it's being really boundaried, and it's holding our kids accountable, which I know you're a fan as well of Brene Brown. And she has said that her research has shown her that the only variable that's the same in all folks that are compassionate is that they have boundaries of steel.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So in order for us to show up and the most compassionate place with our kids, we have to have boundaries of steel. And that's because when you don't have boundaries of steel and your kids are just shenaniganing over here, you are in resentment, you're frustrated, you're angry, you don't really have space to have compassion. But with boundaries, you set those boundaries, and no matter what, you're going to stay consistent in your boundaries. Then you've got all the energy and all the space in the world to have more compassion for your kids.
Yeah.
So that's the love part of the love and logic part. The logic part is that when boundaries and consequences happen with sincere empathy, that's key. Then our kids basically begin to have this logic that starts to go, okay, I wonder how this choice is going to affect my life. And I wonder how this choice is going to affect others' lives. So because you're showing up with love, they logic it out.
Okay. Because if you don't have love, you're making it easy on them, because this is you're overreacting. You're making it easy for them to tap out, not have to think about anything. My parents are the worst. Is that kind of?
Yes. And then they just have to sit in that space, and they have to think either of strategies to combat you and to come up against you, right? Or they're blaming you. They're not having any accountability of their own. They can get so worked up because mom is so mad. They can get so like victim-y because my mom is so mean and my mom is so mad, versus sitting there and saying, oh, maybe I shouldn't have come home at 1 o'clock in the morning. That must have been really tough for her. So that's kind of the love and the logic piece.
I love it. I think that I don't know if you've had this experience, so I imagine so, or had clients that do, of when they do kind of take that anger away, that it's almost like their kids will come down and I don't know, maybe they're wearing something that they normally wouldn't, or they say something, whatever. And when the parent doesn't engage, it's almost like they're almost like, what are you looking at, mom and dad? And it's like, oh, how beautiful you are. It's like, okay, and it's like, it's almost like, okay, I'll be right back. I'll go change. I mean, it's not that easy, but have you had that experience where you just watch the fire go out of them because you love it?
It's the ultimate curveball. When I talk with parents, I let them know anytime you're going to apply a new strategy or something, it's like acne. Just expect that it's going to get worse before it gets better, just because kids are going to push back. And this happens super young. Like I think about as I started to really hit hard in applying some of the love and logic strategies between like 9 months to 18 months ish with my little kiddo. Oh man, she was not a happy camper at all. Like she
that young.
I mean,
this is right. Okay.
Sure. Yep. So basically, there are some key components to the love and logic theme. And here's the thing. This is one of the reasons I love love and logic, because it had so many different parenting pieces, parenting strategies, or things like that, choice parenting, what you've talked about, those kinds of things. There's a lot of that in it, right? So you're going to hear some things that are very similar. So at the very, very heart, here's the key components. At the very heart of love and logic is the relationship and connection. Which speaks to my soul. I love that stuff. At the very heart of it is having that. Everything goes back to the importance of that relationship and how to help strengthen that and support that, how to fortify that relationship. So if there is no relationship to speak of, if there's no connection, if you don't have that with your kiddos, that's where you start.
I love it. And I know I'm going to ADD a little bit of this stuff.
You're fine. You do your thing.
But I felt that when you were saying that connection piece, because I even feel like when I have parents say, look, I didn't have any parenting paradigm used on me and I turned out fine. And sometimes I almost feel bad when it's like, hey, what's your relationship like with your parents now? And it's, we don't really talk much, or we don't get along, or I tolerate them. And then I feel like when people have kind of fused to that, and that's normal, again, it goes back to they don't know that what a relationship looks like. And they've stuck on this, well, that's going to be they walk all over me or that sort of thing. But no, you're talking about a relationship with your kids that will last forever, that it will extend with your grandkids. It's a wonderful thing, right?
Yeah, it's a situation of where you keep in mind, my kids are going to pick where I go in retirement, like when I'm old and can't, I want to have a good enough relationship with my kids that they stick me somewhere really lovely.
I'm going to need my diapers changed at some point, and
yes, right. Sure. So that's at the very core of everything. Now, what that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that because the relationship's most important, I'm going to let my kids walk all over me. Right. It doesn't mean because the relationship's most important, I'm going to stay quiet about this. Similarly, it does not mean because the relationship's most important, I'm going to blast my kids like nobody's business. And I call those the lawnmowers and fire hoses, right? So it's not that. It's not the snowplow parent either. It's a very beautiful, like moving from a drill sergeant or a helicopter or what I call a fire hose and a lawnmower. It's moving into this consultant role with them.
Okay.
In the space of that. And the key to that is empathy.
Okay.
That's
I
the
really
key
don't
to
have
that.
time for this, but man, I feel like a separate podcast on I feel like people truly just need more empathy training. And even people that think they know empathy, bless their hearts, I have empathy for them. But they don't, it goes back to that. They don't even know that they don't know what true empathy is. I get a lot of in my office, empathy is, okay, no, that makes sense. But here's what they need to know. You know, it's like, that's, a pause is not empathy. Okay, but comma is not empathy. But maybe we do that on a part 2.
Yeah. Empathy is really where it's at, because empathy in Love and Logic specifically, empathy comes before every single thing that comes out of your mouth. It comes before every tactic. It comes before every consequence. And because folks are so confused about empathy, they think, no, if I give empathy, then my kid's going to think they got off and didn't get any. Or if I give empathy, then my kids won't really know that I mean business. Or I'm going to do empathy and that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to stay in that space and I'm not going to give these consequences. But that's not what empathy is, right? Empathy is basically holding it, sitting with somebody in it and saying, this is important to you. And I get that. And I like how I word it with my clients is I say, you give an empathetic statement and then you put a period after it. No bridge, no but bridge, no yet, no however, no. I even had a client, bless their hearts. I even had a client that I took all those off the table and they came back and they're like, it's not working. And I said, okay, so walk me through. And they were using the word nevertheless because I had not said that word. And so they thought that was the word.
Well, I hear you. Man, that must be hard. Nevertheless, you know,
it's still a bridge. So we have to put a period after the empathy. But that empathy, it can be a phrase. It can be a sound. Like there's times where I have like hands to the heavens. I have to ask for strength from the man above because of whatever my kids have done. And all I can get out is an empathetic noise. Sometimes that's what happens, right? Like, Yep. Or it can be a look, an empathetic look. Like I think about times when I'm having a conversation with my husband and I'm verbally vomiting all my stuff and it's just so hard. And he looks at me and just gives me this just soft look of like, oh my gosh.
Right.
That hurts my heart to hear, right? It can even be a touch.
Yeah.
An arm around them or, something like that. So empathy doesn't just have to be a phrase. It's quickest with a phrase, but there can be a lot of other things. But empathy is at the very core of the Love and Logic piece.
And I was saying, am I hearing you correctly that he is not staring at your phone while your kid talks to you? Is that apparently that's not?
No, because that's not true empathy.
I know.
Right? And here's the thing. It's all about tone.
Yeah.
And it's all about your body language. You can say the same thing like such. You could say, gosh, that sounds really hard. And it could sound like, well, gosh, that sounds really hard.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's the same exact words. But if it's like, oh, gosh, sweetie, that sounds really hard. It just sounds different, right? And if I'm saying, gosh, that's really hard, and I'm looking at my phone, they're thinking like, how hard is it? Oh, like clearly,
yeah. And then
it's not that important.
That's why I think text can be so difficult too, because I mean, how many times now do you have someone telling you about a conversation, and then you say, well, and then what did they say? And they're like, well, let me tell you, and they pull out their text, right? And then and it says, and then they said, that sounds really hard, and you're right, and they look at you, you're like, I mean, how rude is that? I'm like, well, I think it's like super awesome. I mean, we don't know.
Sure, one way or the other, yeah. So the beauty of this empathy piece is the best way to hold a kid accountable without losing their love, without losing their respect, without losing them being engaged is through empathy.
Okay.
It's the best way to, because if we give out that empathy, we're standing beside them in it. We're allowing their ears to be able to open up and hear what it is that we have to say, because we're not lecturing, we're not mad, we're not whatever. So it allows us to align with them and look at the issue or look at the situation. And then they've got to figure out what to do. If we stand in between that because we're mad, because we're lecturing, because we're carrying the entire burden for them so they don't have to feel the pain, if we're standing in between that, then they don't have the ability to work through that. And then we're surprised as parents. It's so funny to me because I visit with so many folks that complain about millennials and blah, 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 blah. And they complain about these kids, these entitled kids that are being raised now and kids that are in junior high and high school, yada, yada, yada. And as I'm hearing them, I think like, we're raising them though.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. I mean, and yes, there are entitled kids out there and I get that. But at the end of the day, if we stand in between the pain, either because we're trying to inflict it or because we're trying to prevent it, they don't get the muscles on how to deal with that pain. They don't know how to have that happen in their life. And so we want to blame them for not being able to do X, Y, and Z, for not being able to talk to a professor about a grade, for not being able to pick themselves up after that no when they didn't get the job or whatever. But my stars, a lot of times we're preventing them from that pain or we're the ones causing it. They don't know how to do it. So empathy allows that piece.
Okay, I love it. I mean, I can go into and I'll try to make this one super quick, but I mean, I like what you're saying there because, and then we want to lecture them because they didn't do it. And then we want, and there goes that without the empathy piece. And it's not even asking them, why is that hard? What's difficult about going to your professor? Tell me what that's like. And then we get into that thing with like, well, you just need to do it. And when I was young, I did it and whatever. And so again, the lack of empathy. So, all right, I think we got the empathy thing down.
It's the bee's knees. Okay. So that is key, most important relationship in the empathy stuff. So other stuff in Love and Logic is you share control within limits.
Okay. What's that look like?
All right. Okay. So what that looks like is this is about boundaries. Here's the thing. Nobody likes to be told what to do. I don't like it. Our kids don't like it. We have this part of our brain that wants to have a say, that wants to have control in our lives. We have that piece of us, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we set control within limits, basically what we do is we don't go around telling everybody what they can do and can't do or how they can do it. We let them know what we're willing to allow and what we're okay with.
Okay.
I am more than happy to take you to your friend's house as long as your words are respectful as we're driving.
Okay.
You are more than welcome to go over and hang out with so-and-so just as soon as your homework's done.
Okay.
So it comes in this space of like, absolutely, right? My little guy, fruit snacks are the bee's knees for him. He just turned 6 and he would live off of fruit snacks if he could. And so when he comes in he's getting there to where it's not every single morning, but he'll come in the morning, first thing, like I'm not even out of bed yet. And he's popped up and wants fruit snacks for breakfast. So he comes in and he's like, Mom, can I have fruit snacks for breakfast? First words out of my mouth get to be, oh, buddy, absolutely. You can have some fruit snacks just as long as you've had a banana and some toast.
Okay.
And so what he hears is, yes, I can have fruit snacks. I just need to have bananas and toast first. I can jump through that hoop to get my fruit snacks. Right?
Let's do it.
Right? So vice versa, let's say he gets out of bed and he's like, Mom, can I have fruit snacks for breakfast? And I say, oh, buddy, absolutely. You can have some fruit snacks just as soon as you have your toast and you have your banana. And he says, no, I don't want my toast and banana. I want fruit snacks. Well, this is an opportunity, right? He's trying to engage with me. And I'm not saying that he's like consciously thinking, I'm going to engage with my mother and blah, blah, blah. But in that space, I get to say, oh, buddy, nice try. Go ahead and have a banana and some toast, and then you can have some fruit snacks. And then I just go about my business, right? Uh-huh. So it's sharing that control within limits. You're going to give up as much control as you possibly can. What's tricky is, in a lot of parenting strategies and in parenting in general, we hoard control.
Yeah.
Like we're the parent, we know best. And it comes from both spaces. Sometimes it's, we're the parent, we know best, tough tic tacs. Or sometimes it's, oh my gosh, let me help you. Like I want to be there for you. I don't want you to have to suffer through this. So let me take some of that off your plate, right? But the problem is that when we hoard control, our kids will do whatever they can to pry that from our hands. Because they're hardwired to want to have choice.
Yeah. We
signed up for agency before even coming to this planet. That's the plan we picked. It's the key to the plan we picked, right? So if kids are trying to pry that away from us, that's where you get these power struggles. And that's where you get like, are you serious right now that we're fighting about wearing a red coat versus a blue one? This is shenanigans, right? But if we share that control and we give them as many choices as they can possibly have, then they're able to feed that. And then when we have to have it, it's okay because they've had it in plenty of other spaces.
Well, I like the idea too. You're definitely talking consistency as well, and because I know the fruits. If we use that fruit snack example, I know I work with a lot of parents that would sometimes I don't know if they wake up and they're feeling like it's a good day. They're like, yeah, you bet, go have them. And if they wake up and they aren't feeling it, then like, no, come on, fruit snacks for breakfast. And you're just teaching the kid to just be confused at that point.
Yeah. And then we're confused as to how come they keep doing X, Y, and Z. And it's like, because there's not that consistency across the board, right? So you talked with Brene and Patrick, I don't know when, a little bit ago. I watched the cool video. Yeah. And Brene talks about how there's these 3 components to trust. Consistency is one of those components. So our kids aren't going to build trust with us even if we're not in that consistent space. So we've got build that relationship. We've got empathy. We have the sharing control. Another big part of Love and Logic is sharing dignity.
Okay.
And this for me was really interesting as I started to get really clear on what this looked like. Sharing dignity means my dignity remains intact, their dignity remains intact.
Okay.
My dignity remains intact because I'm steering clear of giving a consequence in anger.
Okay. I like that.
I'm steering clear of lectures.
Yeah. Because you know the data. I mean, I remember reading data at one point that honestly said it was less than 45 seconds is what a teenager is really tuned into in a quote lecture. I mean, and then they're going into that. I think you said it well earlier, where it's like they're just trying to figure out, what do I have to do to get out of this? Do I have to throw a temper tantrum? Do I have to withdraw? What do I have to do to hide things so that I don't ever have to go through this again?
Yes.
I mean, so there's okay. So I like that you're saying that you're going to avoid the lecture.
You're steer clear because lectures just allow kids to blame us for their choices.
Yep.
That's all lectures do. Because as soon as that happens, right, and they click in, you almost see it. Like their eyes glaze over and they're just completely disengaged, right? So we're not dignified when we're giving a lecture.
No.
We've got kids who inside are glazed over, rolling their eyes at us. That's not dignity. And we steer clear of the warnings because begging our children is not dignified.
Yeah.
And our kids are going to need as many warnings as we give. That is one of the hardest components that folks have in the Love and Logic space is that there's not warnings.
So that's
not like 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, don't make me get to 3. Is that the classic warning? Or,
yeah.
Or the, hey, if you do that again. I mean, my wife and I were eating outside Saturday and we were in earshot of another restaurant and there was a guy that just the whole time, we're not going to the fair. We're not going to the fair. I'm like,
yes.
I want to scream, you're taking him to the fair. I mean, you're going, so knock it off. So
don't put that out there. If you're going to the fair, don't put that on the table. Yeah. So this idea of warnings is that if I tell my kids, okay, one more time, and then you're going to your room, even if I follow through, let's say that I'm a rock star parent that day and I follow through with that. Even if I do that, if I give them one warning, they're always going to need one warning.
Oh, I like that. Take the garbage out. And then it's like, parents like, I have to ask him 3 times. And if I got the kid there one-on-one, he's like, I know I've got 2 more times. I mean, it's that easy.
Right? Yes, exactly. So here's the thing, like we want to give our kids as much leeway as we can, and we want to kind of give them a heads up, but our kids are smarter than dogs. Mm-hmm. They're smarter than dogs. And we don't sit there with our puppy and say, listen, Frou-Frou, you poop on the carpet. This is what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So don't poop on the carpet. And then Frou-Frou poops on the carpet and then we have a consequence. No, the consequence just comes out of the pipes. It might even be a little bit of a surprise for Frou-Frou, but the quicker that happens, the more they're going to learn. So we just know, okay, this is the consequence that's going to come down the pipes. Kid does the behavior. We're consistent in the consequence that comes down the pipes. We're giving some empathy before we give the consequence. Consequence comes. Kid's going to learn pretty quick. Every single time I do this, this is going to be a consequence.
Yeah, and every time. Oh, go ahead. Well, okay. Well, first of all, I was going to make a lame joke of, what is the consequence when a kid poops on the rug? But I mean,
Don't hit him on the nose. That's child abuse. Don't do that with a newspaper. Don't do that.
Maybe you're going to get to this, and I'm sure you are. But how do you come up with those consequences? Is that something that the kids are a part of? Is that just something that you kind of come up with?
Yeah, I think it really just depends.
Okay.
Because another part of this, so we have the relationship at the core, and then we have that we're giving empathy before consequences. We have that we're sharing control. We were sharing the dignity. Mm-hmm. Another part of this is shared thinking. Okay. So it depends. Okay. It depends on the situation. It depends on the circumstance. Honestly, there have been times where my kids have come up with way worse of a consequence than I would have ever come up with.
Yeah.
And it's golden. Like sometimes there's times where that could be way helpful. So it really just depends. At the end of the day, the consequence just needs to match up.
Okay.
For example, let's say kid comes home 45 minutes late from curfew, okay? And you're waiting for them and whatever. And you decide that they're going to scrub the toilet because they were late.
Okay.
So the next morning they wake up and you say to them, hey, you were late last night, scrub the toilet. And the kid's sitting there thinking, what on earth does the toilet
have to do
with me being late, right? Now, could that work? Sure. You can logic anything back to the consequence, and that could be, you know what, bud? I was so worried about you yesterday for a solid 45 minutes. I had no time to scrub the toilet. Oh. That's what I was going to do tomorrow, or yesterday when you came home. I was just going to go and scrub I didn't have time because I was so worried about where you were. So you're more than welcome to blah, blah, blah as soon as that toilet's scrubbed. Thanks so much. Right? Like, as long as you connect it, and that's what the love and logic stuff is it's natural consequences. If there's a way that the universe is going to have that consequence be, great. But a lot of times, especially with the youngers, we've got to kind of like create that life experience for them. Okay. But you just match it up. Okay, so what would happen in real life if this were to happen, right? So in real life, if my kid decided to bite someone, here's what the real consequences would be, and how can I make that into like the house stuff, right?
What's that one? What's that one, for example?
It depends.
Okay.
So sometimes I'll have parents say, you know what? Mouths are not for biting. So we don't get to put anything fun in your mouth because nothing fun happened with your mouth.
Okay. No
right? That can be something. It could be, oh, buddy, this is so sad. It's not okay to bite sister. And then there's a whole like uh-oh song that can happen that's a love and logic strategy of where it's like uh-oh, and then you take them to their rooms and things like that. So it really just depends on, it just needs to match up. If someone else bit someone else, there'd probably be some restitution.
Okay.
There would probably be some time away.
Okay.
Right? There would probably not be, okay, let's let you just play with whoever, whenever.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. It depends on the age. It depends on all those kinds of things. But the I guess core like baseline is it just needs to connect with what happened. Yeah. And you logic it through with them initially.
So I like
that. Buddy, I think it would be so much fun for us to get to go to McDonald's and play in the play place. I'm really worried. I'm worried that biting is going to happen in the play place because biting has been happening for the last week. So we can't go to the play place until we can figure out how to not bite. Well, when? Hopefully soon, bud. Hopefully soon. When I feel ready. And here's the thing. We'll say in 3 days. And the kid will be like, okay, I cannot bite for 3 days.
Okay.
And then they don't bite for 3 days. And then we go to the play place and then they bite again. You don't need to tell them a time. A while. Soon. I use the phrase, hopefully soon. For your sake, hopefully soon. Mm-hmm. Right? Or, oh man, I just hope that it's sooner than later.
And then you're saying you do put a time to that so that they do?
I do in my head. I don't do it out loud to them.
Okay. One of these days, because you're open on your podcast too about your ADHD. Man, wouldn't you love to do an episode where we were just allowed to maybe go back after and we
rabbit hole like crazy?
Yeah, because like that one, I was like, but I had jokes about the McDonald's play place always smells like socks, so, or I mean, all those kind of.
Who wants to go there anyway?
Those things when my kids were young, all that stuff. I'm taking a nap up in one of them. I mean, yeah, so those are kind of fun.
Yeah. So those are the ways that you allow. Oh, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I know earlier, and I like where you were saying that sometimes the kids will come up with even worse punishments, and I'm wondering if, and again, not trying to compare, but because I really like what I'm hearing with Love and Logic. I know in the Nurtured Heart, I know that we talk a lot about allowing the kids to kind of come up. Sometimes they come up with those consequences, and because now they kind of have some ownership in it as well.
Yeah.
And you're the one that's maybe not the punisher, but gets to say, when they break the rule, that it's like, oh man, because like they already know. So it sounds like that there's some room for that as well.
Absolutely, and that's part of allowing them their dignity.
Oh, gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how that gets to sound is, oh, sweetie, something needs to happen with this. I'm going to give you till 6 tonight. You come up with a plan.
Yeah, that's good.
On how we're going to make this right. Or you come up with a plan on what you think would be helpful. You come up with a plan on what you're going to do about this.
Yeah.
Or I'll say like, come 6 o'clock, let's sit down and circle back and talk about your thoughts.
Okay.
About what could happen with this. you've got a good head on your shoulders. You'll figure it out. We'll touch base 6 o'clock.
I like that. That's not a, you go and think about it. It's there's some praise there. There's some
space. Yeah. Yeah. And then they come back, and that's when they come back and they're like, well, I think that I should have to do all their chores for the next week. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, girl, I was just going to make you do that today.
Right.
Shoot, you want a week? Okay. All right. And sometimes depending on, because I've got one kiddo particularly who goes way overboard. Like I probably should never eat again.
Okay.
Because I took a cookie, or whatever. And so that gets to be like, well, that's definitely one option. How would that work out for you? To never eat again. Let's think this through. Now I know my body, I've got to eat about every day or it will die. Yeah. So I don't know if you've got the same kind of body. How would that go to never eat again? And they're like, well, I don't mean never eat again. I just mean like, maybe I shouldn't have cookies for like the next week. And I'll say, okay, that's a huge thing. We are going to grandma's on Sunday and grandma makes amazing cookies. So you might want to consider no cookies for the next 3 days versus a week. But you know what? It's your deal. If you want to do a week, I will 110% support you in that. These are just some thoughts to consider. And then they'll be like, okay, I'll take the 3 days.
Right.
But sometimes they'll come with this consequence that's way bigger than you would do. But you think, you know what? Good on you.
Absolutely.
Sounds great. And then when they're frustrated about it, I've had my kids even say, I should have come up with a different consequence. I shouldn't have made it so hard.
Now,
and I think
the empathy.
That's awesome.
It's like, oh man, sounds hard. I mean, that must be tough.
Yes, because then I could just be empathetic. I'm like, it is hard. The week is so long to have to scrub the toilet. I hear you, sister. I get it. It's really, and then I'm aligning with them, and I'm not like, well, you're the one who picked it. Tic-tacs. You don't like it. Oh well. Or saying, you know what, you're right, sweetheart. I'll scrub the toilets for the next.
Right. Or you're done now, because then you're teaching them the all right, I'm going to go just hammer away all the time at mom. I'm eventually going to get her to back down.
Yes, I mean, their dignity.
Yeah.
Yes. Their dignity stays intact when we don't blow shame glitter on them.
Oh, I use that all the time, and I give you credit. I want you to know, Becky. Shame
glitter. You're sweet. Yeah. So I'm sure other folks have said shame glitter, but if we don't blow shame on, and the shame stuff is big. Shame stuff is about identity, right? It's not about behavior. So if we're like, you're blah, 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 that's shame glitter, right? Yeah. So their dignity is intact if we don't throw shame on them. Their dignity intact is if we stay off the blame train. Their dignity is intact if we stay out of judgment. So we want their dignity to be intact, and we want ours to be intact.
And I love that. I want to go back to the beginning where none of this has been walk all over me parenting. None of it has been without consequences, and none of it has been without boundaries. So I just want to, make sure that people that hear this know that. What do you think what are the things that really get in the way with love and logic?
Oh, good question. So when a relationship isn't present, nothing that you try is going to work.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's huge. Which I would dare say with any parenting strategy.
Yeah.
If there's a relationship that's not present, it's not going to go well. A lot of times when parents come back and they're like, Becky, I'm having a really hard time with this, and this isn't working or whatever. When we peel the onion back, true empathy is not happening.
I agree. Yeah.
They're trying to be empathetic while they're angry. They're trying to be empathetic while they're lecturing. They're trying to be empathetic while they're enabling. And so true empathy is not necessarily happening. So a lot of times if the empathy is not there, then none of the strategies are going to work. I mean, there's all kinds of strategies. There's something called the energy drain. There's delayed consequences. There's like a strategic training session where you kind of like create
these are all love and logic.
These are all love and logic things. None of those are going to work if empathy is not present.
And again, I know we spent so much time on empathy, but that's so important. And even as you're saying that, I know that I have people that say, no, I was very empathetic. And again, you go back and you review the game film, and it was after I lectured, after I let them know how hard it was for me. Now let me hear what it's like for you. Well, you've just set the table for them to not, I don't want to make mom feel worse, or I don't want to, whatever it is. So then it's like, no, I'm good. And they're like, okay, good. And so then the parent feels like I did my job, but I threw the shame glitter at them to start with.
Yep. And the other thing where love and logic gets a little wonky is if people are showing up as that drill sergeant or showing up as that helicopter or as that fire hose and lawnmower, and they're allowing their own stuff to get in the way.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I'm not a good parent if I don't hold their feet to the fire and say da 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 da. Well, I'm not a good parent if I let them just flounder and do this all by themselves. So if our stuff gets in the way, then that's really wonky for the love and logic stuff as well. But quite honestly, I think that that's true for any parenting strategy that anybody tries to use.
Do you feel like, and maybe some of these are going to be layups as questions, but so I run into a lot where people will adopt a new parenting paradigm. They try it for an afternoon, see it didn't work, and now, go back to the old. I mean, do you feel like that this is one of those you just got to keep at it, that's why I was going to say paradigm, or it's the new place we're coming from, or it's our baseline, or I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yes. And I think it's funny because a lot of times parents, and I get to say this because I've done this myself, parents will sit the kids down and they'll be like, okay, guys, we're starting something new.
Yeah.
Mom and dad are going to do this new thing. It's called Love and Logic. And then our kids go and Google it and figure out all the loopholes, right? So we're going to start this new thing. So you got to be on board. Like that happens, right? As well, where it's kind of the situation of where we want for them to be on board. And we're just looking for the silver bullet. Like we just want this one thing to work. And so if we try it and it doesn't, we need to be in this growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, right? Because that's the whole, there's something called the competency confidence loop, right? We get more confidence, the more competent we get. But the key is we have to try. So you try and you fall flat on your face, and it's not going to be smooth at first. It's going to be try and then burp, and that didn't work. And why didn't that work? And let me look at that. A lot of times we're like, burp, oh, that didn't work because my kids, blah, 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 blah. But we need to be in the space of, oh, that didn't work. What can I do different? How can I show up different in that space? Then as we do that, we get the competency, and then we start to get the confidence. And then, now, I've been using Love and Logic on my own kids. My oldest is 11. And I'm just starting to see the fruits of my labors.
Okay. No, that's good. That's good for people to hear. And I like where you're saying I know you're an acceptance and commitment therapy person as well.
Yeah.
Our goal is this new parenting paradigm. Then, that didn't work, or I did a bad job of it or whatever. We're not even debating if that's true or false. Those aren't workable thoughts toward our goal. And our brain's going to continually try to tell us, hey, path of least resistance, let's go back to just whatever, not worrying about this because it's hard. So I like that you're saying that. It's just it's going to be a process. I like that. The growth mindset.
And to me, everything's informational. It's not good or bad, right or wrong. Everything's informational. So I tried this tactic on, and this is what happened. That's information that I can kind of take in and say, okay, what worked, what didn't work, what helped, what didn't help. And then I can go back to the drawing board and start over. But a lot of times what happens is, in kind of this like acceptance commitment therapy or acceptance commitment training space, is we as parents are not aware of the physiological sensations that go on our bodies when certain things happen. Like if my kid mouths off, that for me sparks my, that's a trigger super quick. If I have a disrespectful kiddo, whether it's my own, whether it's somebody else's, whatever, right? And if I'm not aware of how that shows up in my body, then I'm just going to go into this other space that I've always gone into, the lecturing, the anger, the putting them in their place, the whatever. But that key, my body wisdom is going to tell me, okay, this is where we need to go. So I need to be super clear. When so-and-so disrespects me and my heart starts to beat really, really fast, I need to be aware, okay, my heart's beating really, really fast.
I like that. And go deal with that, right? So, because I have people that are saying, look, there's nothing I can do about it. And it's no, you're aware of it now. So now let's double down on some nice mindfulness principles. Let's kind of set the table so that maybe the trigger won't be as loud or as difficult. And now you're wearing the robe, you got the ponytail, they mouth off and you're zen. You can get there. Don't fuse to the, nothing I could do about it. That's just who I am.
Yes. And my body wisdom tells me where I need to tweak things a little bit or whatever, right? So a lot of times people will ask, they'll say, okay, so if I'm going to start this whole Love and Logic-y thing, where's the first place that I go? And I let them know, like, the first tactic I would really lock up, regardless of what's going on with your kids, the first tactic I'd really lock up is neutralizing the arguing. That's the first place to go, because if you've got a kid who's running their mouth and you're going to engage,
right,
nothing's going to work.
Never.
So that neutralizing the arguing is the bee's knees. More for you than for them, quite honestly, because 9 times out of 10, our kids argue because we argue with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I know you get to see this stuff all the time too, but even if the parent starts without empathy, if they're just like, okay, first of all, that's, you shouldn't be doing this at all, or I can't believe you're doing that. I mean, already we've spiked the adrenaline, the cortisol, and we are going to now just slowly slip into this defense and tit for tat. And I've got to get louder or come up with a better analogy. And there's at that point, I know you see this too. Nothing productive is going to happen. So you come up with a better analogy, and then they're going to go, "Oh my gosh, you're right. I need to back up."
It's not like all of a sudden they're going to get out of their cave person brain and just have all of this logic going on in their head. No. They're already back in that cave person brain, right? And so it's not necessarily going to be helpful, but being able to neutralize that arguing and curb that, which is a strategy, right? Of big, like Love and Logic calls it neutralizing the arguing. Being able to do that, and it's quick, it's fast. Being able to do that allows you to then open up all those other doors, to then share the control, to share the dignity, to share the thinking, to strengthen the relationship. It opens up all those doors. But if you've got a kid who's running their mouth and you do not have the wherewithal to disengage and the strategies to disengage, nothing else is going to work. So that's typically where I tell people when they're like, "Okay, where do I start? Like, I just want to try it on. I just want to see if it's a fit for me. Where do I start?" Neutralizing the arguing is always where I suggest that folks.
Beckie, I love it. I love it. I wish we had more time. I know I told you that I knew I think we were both joking about we could probably go a couple hours easy.
We could.
I know.
No, you're totally
we shall. I think there should be a part 2.
Yeah, great.
Okay. Beckie, where do people find you?
Yeah, so go to BeckieHennessy.com. Okay. BECKIE, and then Hennessy is just HENNESSY, BeckieHennessy.com. And I finally got everything under one umbrella. Sweet. So I used to have a therapy website and a coaching website, and it was shenanigans for my ADHD brain. Now it's all under one roof, just BeckieHennessy.com. They can find out a ton there. They can go and put some information in and get a free 50-minute seminar on connection.
Oh, nice.
Those kinds of things. So BeckieHennessy.com is where you'll find me. I'm on Instagram. I have to think. What am I on Instagram?
I'll link everything there. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Beckie.Hennessy.LCSW, I think is Instagram, and I have a Facebook page.
Okay, I'll link to all of them. You and I both serve as mental health board folks on Leading Saints, which is a blast too.
Yeah, it is a blast.
Yeah, and I can't wait to have you on again.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Beckie.
It's fun.
All right, hang on a second, and I'll hit stop. But hold on one second here.